Well, welcome everyone. We are super excited to have you all here tonight. It's going to be a really exciting lecture. I just wanted to start by briefly introducing our lecturer, David Wang, before passing it off to him to tell us what you came here to hear. So David is happily and humbly serving as the chairman of Aqueduct Project's Board of Intercessors, a community dedicated to prayer. He retired from his position at Washington State University after over 20 years, where he is now serving as professor of architecture emeritus. During the time he was working there, he taught graduate courses in history and theory, interdisciplinary ethics and practice, research methods, and foundation courses in design and construction. Most of his spiritual growth has taken place in churches that value the priesthood of all believers without paid clergy. And he describes himself as an academic, an artist, a husband, a father, and a grandfather. He's also a lover of the Word of God, which is new every morning. And so with that, I will pass it off to David.
Well, thank you, everyone, for attending this benefit lecture. And it is a benefit lecture of the Aqueduct Project. And before I get started with the content of the lecture, I want to say a few things about Aqueduct. So Aqueduct is an online program platform where one of our services is to give free education on matters related to the Christian worldview, the historic Christian worldview. And these courses are online. They are all without charge. And to give you an example of some of the courses that are currently being offered or online, will be online soon, The Beauty and Majesty of Jesus, The Prayer and Mission. These two courses are ongoing currently, and there's, I believe the data shows we have 450 participants in these courses. Future courses will be The Book in the Biblical Era, Celebrating Communion Online, and some of these titles will take place just once. They are one-time lectures like this one. And some of these are sessions that are once a week for 4, 5, 6 weeks, but they're all free. The Psalms, the Resurrection of Jesus Christ, the Prayer of St. Paul, the Footsteps of Martin Luther. These are just some offerings that we have in the courses program. I encourage you to check it out. And we also host prayer rooms. We have 15 prayer rooms. I am actually speaking to you on the Prayer Room Alpha platform right here on the top here. But we have 15 prayer rooms, and these enable people from all over the world to join together and to pray. I mean, I don't know if you are like me. We've been in prayer meetings where everybody simply just talk, but this is going right to prayer, and it's a wonderful platform. Some of these have prayer ongoing 24/7. Like, for example, the Global Family Prayer Room is an ongoing 24/7 prayer platform. So I show the schedule there, and this is what Aqueduct hosts. On the bottom here, you see the Prayer Room Neapolis. This is actually a virtual reality prayer room where you can, as an avatar, get into this room and pray with others. I frankly have never done it, and I'm not sure how to do it. But our founder, Jonathan Armstrong, is very cutting edge, and we began this Prayer Room Neapolis, which is a virtual reality prayer room. This is a benefit lecture, so we welcome support. We welcome donations for this work, and I give the website here, but as well as a physical address where you can mail donations to. And I will put this slide back up at the end of this lecture. But finding home, architecture's long journey, this is our topic for tonight. And just to add to Matthew's very good introduction of me, yes, I have for the last couple of decades taught in architecture programs, and my emphasis is not really to teach how to students how to build buildings, although I've done that. My areas have to do with the ideas and the theories and the philosophies that enable building to begin with. Why do we even build? I often tell my students, imagine putting together a doghouse. I mean, this is a piece of work. You have to go to Home Depot and get the wood and cut and saw and make sure. If you're like me, the first time I cut isn't, it's not the right size, and so it's a huge project. Now, if you imagine the Great Wall or the Taj Mahal, these are major architectural projects, and the human beings are able to do this is a marvelous reflection of creativity and ability. So over the years, as professors do, I wrote books. We write books, we publish, and my areas have been in theory, in history, and as Matthew mentioned, in researching these matters. But I want to tell you a story. This is about 25 years ago. I gave a talk to a K-12 Christian school here in the Spokane area, and about architecture. They invited me to come, and I frankly forget what I talked about, but I'll never forget the Q&A, because one student raised his hand and said to me, asked me, well, Professor Wang, what is a Christian architecture? And I hemmed and hawed, and that question took me by surprise, because all through these years, I've been teaching the traditional books and the, shall we say, the secular literature on architecture. What constitutes a biblical architecture? I've had that thought in my mind. I've had that question in my mind for over 20 years. And some of what I'll say tonight is actually an answer to that student. So let me show you some great architecture. You come to a lecture on architecture and you expect to see some great architecture, so I won't disappoint you. I'm going to show you some great architecture. Here's some great architecture for you. I moved here after my divorce 13 years ago. This is PL. I corresponded with her earlier this year, and this is her testimonial. I moved here after my divorce 13 years ago, but only last year that I feel fully at home here. Previously, home was a place to fulfill other people's expectations, like my emotionally abusive ex-husband, or pressure to decorate in acceptable ways. It is freeing now to enjoy just sitting in the living room, knitting and listening to music, to savor how the daylight changes its quality throughout the year as it streams through the living room. The birds choose the same nesting places in the bushes outside. For you Bible readers, I mean, it sounds like Psalm 84, doesn't it? Even the birds have found a resting place in the courtyards of God. So the birds choose the same nesting places in the bushes outside. Last year, I planted flowers in pots on the front steps for the first time. So let me just say to all of you who are listening, never mind the rest of the lecture, what is such a home place for you and why? I'm very interested in what your experience is relative to home and specific spaces which you feel is home for you. Because I always say to my students, everywhere you go to, home is the only place you come back to. You go to work, you go to school, you go to work, you even go on vacation. I don't know about you, but I've been on vacations where I can't wait to get back home, right? So what is such a home place for you where you can come back to? And why is it home for you? I welcome you to send that to me in my email address here, because I'm doing some writing on this topic, and I really wish and hope that you can send me some examples that I can possibly use. Architecture's long journey. Here's another example. It was a short walk from our home, and I would walk there to check out books to read. The library was not a pretty building from the outside. This is R.E. in 2023. He's reflecting on this library space over 50 years ago. The library was not a pretty building from the outside, but inside was an amazing treasure where I could travel anywhere in a book. This is a memory. This is a memory home. This is a place that he felt very intimate with, even now, as a memory home. And the outside was not, the building itself is not a great architecture as we typically understand it, but he felt that this was home for him. So again, what are some memory homes that you inhabit? I would love to know. I would love to know places in your past that you still inhabit. And I would love to hear from you at davidwang@wsu.edu. Last year, I went back to Cleveland. I live in Washington State, but I flew back to Cleveland for a week because I wanted to see all of my childhood homes. This is one of them. This is the home where I learned English. You know, English is not my first language because I was born in Taiwan. My family immigrated to the United States when I was 6. And this is the house where I learned English. And the way that I learned English was my parents had me join this book club. And I was so excited to be getting these books. And I learned English by slogging through these books. And one of the books was Huckleberry Finn. And I would put a dot after each line of the novel after I had mastered the English words on that book. And Huckleberry Finn, if you want to learn English, I don't recommend Huckleberry Finn because Mark Twain uses all kinds of ways to capture the different Southern dialects that he uses in a novel. But at any rate, I still have great memories of those spaces in which I learned English. And I went back there last year just to see it, just to be in Cleveland once again. And truth be told, I'm going again later this year. My wife gives me permission just to fly to Cleveland on my own and just to be in my childhood spaces. This is the Lumberyard Food Hall and Luxury. I told you I was going to show you great architecture. Lumberyard Food Hall and Luxury Suite in Pullman, Washington. This is where Washington State University is located. And so for 25 years, I was at Washington State University. And this is a picture that Pullman, the city of Pullman, puts on its website. Now, if you're a city that would put a building like this on its website, this is the Lumberyard Food Hall and Luxury Suites, mind you. Now, if you're a city that puts this on your website, you're basically saying you're not Paris. Okay, this is not Paris we're talking about. This is not even that big city on the west side of this Washington State, Seattle. This is not even Seattle. This is Pullman, where the Lumberyard Food Hall and Luxury Suites is located. But I have a story to tell you. Teaching there many years, when our seniors are about to graduate, I always ask them a question. And I don't know why it is, but the phenomena in Washington State is many people on the eastern side of Washington go to Seattle, where the big bad University of Washington is. And a lot of students from Seattle come over to the east side to study at Washington State University. And when those students from Seattle are seniors, I always ask them this question. When you first arrived in Pullman, what did you think of Pullman? These guys are, coming over from cosmopolitan Seattle, and they said, "Oh man, I mean, what a podunk place. What am I going to do? What am I going to do just on the weekends? There's nothing to do." 4 years later, or in some cases 5 years later, when they graduate, I asked them, "What do you think of Pullman now?" And it's very hard for them to leave. because Pullman had become home. Pullman had become home. One way to understand all architecture, from our houses to so-called great architecture, is to see all of it as participation in a journey between two paradises. From a pastoral paradise, Garden of Eden, to an urban paradise, the New Jerusalem. Now, those of you who are Bible readers, you know that this is the scriptures. This is the bookends of the scriptures, and we go to it. It is a bottomless well of endless insight into who we are as human beings. And what the scriptures say is that all of human experience began in a pastoral paradise, and it's headed in a direction. It's headed towards the New Jerusalem, an urban paradise. So we go from pastoral to urban in this long, long journey. So what is the first architecture? The first architecture happens in Genesis 3:7. It says this, then the eyes of both of them, Adam and Eve, were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loincloth. And I want you to think about this. This is the first time something in organic nature was taken, fig leaves were taken, plucked from their tree, and used for purposes that they were not intended for. They were used to become a covering, a loincloth. And we, from an architectural point of view, we ask ourselves, what did they use for thread? What did they use for tools? So Genesis 3:7 is really the beginning of construction know-how, because it began a long, long lineage of construction, of the task to build coverings. Because now, after as you know, the biblical account, after the fall, there was a separation not only from God, but from nature. And now we needed coverings. And you know the story of the pastoral paradise. They were kicked out. This is a painting, Expulsion from Paradise, by the early Renaissance painter Masaccio. They were kicked out, so there began the journey. At this point, they didn't know where they were going. And I need to cut to the chase, because going from here to there is enough for a semester's worth of material, but I'm going to do it in one slide. At this point, it was pretty dark. It was pretty iffy as to what would happen to the human experience. But a few short chapters later, as most of you will recall, a man was called out of Ur of the Chaldees, and the God of the universe told him, look, I want you to look at the stars. So shall your offspring be. And so I want you to leave where you're currently living, and I want you to go on this journey. And the New Testament says to us of Abraham that he was looking for a city with foundations, whose builder and architect was God. I mean, this is several chapters after the tremendous collapse of the created order due to the entrance of sin. And God is doing a new thing. God began to do a new thing to bring his people on a journey. And again, this is just cutting through the chase. In Moses, we see God telling Moses, I send an angel before you to prepare to bring you to the place I have prepared for you. So it's not only this depressing expulsion from paradise. The purpose of God, as the scriptures reveal it, is that God sets his people on journey. God sets the whole cosmos on journey to a place where he has prepared. And you all know the New Testament passage, in my Father's house are many dwellings. Now, this word in Greek means abodes. stayings, remainings. If it were not so, I would not have told you, I go to prepare a place for you. And I mentioned just a minute ago that home is where we always long to come back to. Well, this word in Greek means remainings. This is a place where you will remain forever. And there are many of these places that we are headed to where we could, as it were, stretch out our legs and our feet and relax. And it is the ultimate dwelling. And this is what the Christ promised his people. And then at the end of the New Testament, of course, the final architecture, we see a city with a river of life flowing through it. Through the middle of the street of the city, also the tree of life, the leaves were for the healing of the nations. Now, I want you to notice something here, that in this final architecture, human artifice, streets and cities, for example, become one with nature, rivers, water, trees, leaves, fruits. You see a difference. You see that at the beginning, there was an artifice, there was an artificiality with the use of human ingenuity to take a natural product like fig leaves and to use human means and methods to create a covering for us, artifice. At the final architecture, the human artifice and the natural creation of God become one. And this is something that I think we lose a lot in the current sort of the institutional Christian practice we have today, because it's all about, well, I don't want to say what it's all about, but the scriptural picture is that you will be completely, absolutely natural in all that you do, because it would be in accord once again with God's purposes, God's life, and there is no more artificial coverings. This is our journey. But you might think, well, that's all good for you as a professor to say, but that's not how I feel. I mean, I don't really feel, this is my life, right? It's not much of a journey. And if you look at what's going on in the world today, my goodness, there's no recognizable journey of any kind. Everything is helter-skelter. So we have to find home. It's the title of this lecture. It's about finding home, and we feel at home. And it is true, there aren't that many places that qualify for this. We feel at home when your internal proportions, that's everything that's inside of you, rhyme with the external arrangements of things around you, such that you are regenerated. That's home. That's home. I would say to all of you right now, when you come home after a tiring day, it's home to you because that's where you regenerate. That's where you have arranged your life, the things around you, to be so in tune with the things in you that is something you come home to be regenerated. Like this. I moved here after my divorce 13 years ago, but it wasn't until last year that I felt fully at home in my life. So this person is on her journey, and it took 13 years for her internal proportions to rhyme with everything around her, because she's arranged everything to the point where she felt fully at home, and she's happy. There's this expansive. Look at her. She's has her arm outstretched. Let's say she's dancing. It's a beautiful thing, and I hope we all have this experience at home. But wait a minute, doesn't this picture look like something that doesn't? Haven't you seen something like this? Haven't we all seen something like this? This is the polymath, I mean, the artist, Leonardo da Vinci, again in the early Renaissance, and his sketch of the Vitruvian Man. Now, who was Vitruvius? Vitruvius was a first century BCE architect, an architectural theorist. He is really the first architectural theorist that we have in the West. Now, if I were talking about China, we can talk about other theorists that go back, but this is in the Western tradition, architectural theory began with Vitruvius. And what did he say? What is this man in a circle that Da Vinci captured? Vitruvius says this: since nature has designed the human body so that its members are duly proportioned to the frame as a whole, it appears that the ancients had good reason for their rule, that in perfect buildings, the different members must be in exact symmetrical relations to the whole general scheme. Now that's sort of sounds pretty highfalutin, but let me break it down for you. What Vitruvius meant by the whole general scheme, it wasn't the whole general scheme of a building. It was the entire cosmos. That somehow, when the building is done right, the human body in its proportions, in conjunction with that space, echoes the entire cosmos. This circles the Aristotelian cosmos. And all of the human experience begins to be experienced when we get the external proportions right. This is the theory of Vitruvius. Everything inside of you rhymes with everything outside of us. Never mind this table, never mind my desk, never mind my easel to the right of me. But everything out there in the whole created cosmos, I am one with it. This is what architecture in the Vitruvian idea meant to do. And of course, Vitruvia, once again, is the first theorist that we have. Okay, here we are on our journey. What our friend, after 13 years experience, is an analogy to this type of experience. She, after 13 years, felt at home. She was one with the cosmos through this place where she now has arranged where the birds come back to nest every year. She planted plantings on her stairs for the first time. This is home to her. This is home in our memory to cherished places that have formed us over the years to be what we are. This is home as well. This is home to our present time, even if we live in Pullman. I mean, we value the places we have around us, and over time, for our students over 4 years, it becomes so endearing that they don't want to leave. This is a tremendously important aspect of human experience. We often forget. One of the reasons we forget this is because current Christian sort of institutional teaching, institutional practice, it doesn't give much emphasis on the material world, on the material surroundings that we have been providentially provided for. And yet it is the material surroundings that form, never mind world architectural history, it forms your architectural history on this journey that you are on. Whether or not you know you're on a journey, when you feel at home in something, it's an analogy between the covering of the first loincloth and the absolute freedom of the New Jerusalem. It's an analogy to that. That's why you feel at home. If our earthly home is destroyed, we have a building from God. For in this tent we groan, longing to put on our heavenly dwelling. Not that we would be unclothed, but that we would be further clothed. So there are hints in the scriptures that tell us about the beauty and the importance of physical environments, because where we are at We feel at home as an analogy, but we are never fully satisfied. Why? Because we long to be further clothed. And in every instance of home, human artifice, the things that we make arrangements around us, this table, that hanging, those products that we have in those furnishings in the living room, that becomes one with our sense of home. This is the nave of Saint Denis. Saint Denis is the first construction that began the tradition of the Gothic cathedral. It was dedicated in the mid-12th century. It followed after, if this were an architecture history course, I could show you Romanesque cathedrals that were dark and dingy, but all of a sudden, in the history of architecture, there was an explosion of light where these cathedrals were just explosions of light. And here's the Abbot Suger, that was the innovator of this first Gothic cathedral. Bright is the noble work. And being nobly bright, the work should brighten our minds so that they may travel through the true lights, to the true light where Christ is the door. I'm telling you that the history of architecture has been motivated by this. We have these coverings from the first paradise, but we yearn to be united with a heavenly paradise where even the work of our hands become glowing and become analogies of our heavenly home. So I want to say, next time you go to Saint Denis, if you've never gone there before, or next time you go anywhere, or the next time you think why you feel you are at home right where you are, it is a combination of a loincloth, an analogy, and a city with foundations, an analogy. When you feel discomfited, when you are not at home, it's because you don't have covering and you don't have a sense that you are connected with a city with foundations. When these two things meet along your journey in a way that your internal proportions rhyme with what you have around you, you have home. You have home. So again, if our earthly home is destroyed, we have a building from God. For this tent we've grown, longing to put on our heavenly home. And I don't want you to think of this as churchy or even Christian-y. This is human experience. We long to be put on a dwelling that is heavenly. And we are doing everything we can in our daily lives to arrange our environments as analogies to that heavenly home, so that not that we would be unclothed, but that we would be further clothed. And these are all examples of this journey along the way, of which this is one more example. So whether or not you're dealing with great architecture, but more importantly, your home, your everyday architecture, it's all along this journey, this path. You know, you can expend money, for us in the States, you can expend money and make Airbnb arrangements and go to Saint Denis. Good for you. Good for me. I mean, it's wonderful. But then you go home. Are you with me on that? And it's the same thing. The reason why you go home is because your home is truly a little Saint Denis. Because when you were at Saint Denis, you were just looking at great architecture. Then you come home to all your books and your knitting and your birds in the bushes and your plants on the steps, and you feel at home. Same thing. It's the same journey. What is such a home place for you and why? I'm really interested. I'm just giving this lecture to ask you to send me examples of what is home for you. And again, because I'm doing writing on this, and I would love to see what examples you can offer me. This is where I'm speaking to you from. this is where I concocted this lecture. And again, you see the loincloth, but you see light. You see just something beyond me. And the combination of these two things comfort me that I am in this journey to somewhere, a journey to a home that I will forever remain in. The biblical ingredients, it's a loincloth, and it's a city with foundations. Somewhere along, we are all somewhere along this journey. We're finding home. We're finding home because I show you that mess that we typically think of the world. But through this mess, there's a thread for us, and it's God-given, and it's home for us. You know, I work with the homeless, and the number one issue with the homeless is that they don't have it. They don't have home. So thank God if you have it, because it is a marker, it is a sacrament of your journey to the New Jerusalem. What is such a home place for you? It is an analogy to the New Jerusalem. Worship actually begins here in your home place in all of its materiality and humbleness or grandeur, depending. I mean, you may live in a palace, but whatever it is, you know, we don't measure socially. We kind of measure people by, you know, their sort of social status. You know, do they live in a humble home? Do they live in a big mansion? As a matter of fact, people who live in mansions may not feel they're at home. You know, and those of us who live in humble places, we are at home. Why? Because there's no pretense. There's simply the proportions within me rhyming with the stuff around me. And that, my friends, affirms that you are along the journey from pastoral paradise to urban paradise. Your home places over time is your own history of your journey to urban paradise. And it is the people with you that is the true little flock. What I mean by little flock here is, you know, there's that wonderful passage in Luke, I believe it's Luke 12, where Jesus tells his sort of scraggly band of followers, he says, "Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom." You know, we have such big, you know, if you're in Christian work, it's all about bigness. Let's get it bigger. Well, you know, to be honest with you, I'm unmoved by bigness. I'm very concerned about who we share home with. I just don't mean my specific family. When you share home in different instances of it, it is those people that you are on a journey with and the spaces that they occupy with you. Go out of your way to help those who are homeless, because you need to help them find home. And I think, you know, again, sort of in a rethinking of the sort of the standard Christian message, it really is about helping people find home. You know, it's not about these large metaphysical, theological. If you look at the work of Jesus, what he did was to help people find home. You remember that woman at the well? I think it's John 4, John 3. After he met this woman, he was a Samaritan woman that he was not even supposed to be with. She goes to tell her whole community, "Come and find a man that told me everything that I ever was." This is finding home. And it's all has to do with the material environments around us. Get people to fit the internal proportions with the environments around them, and you would help them realize they're on their way to home. This is I give the website URL on top there. This is a doctor in Hangzhou, China. Hangzhou, a big city. I got sick there once so bad I had to go to a hospital. And this is a doctor in New York. Oh, I don't know if it's New York or Philadelphia or Seattle, I don't know. But they are talking to each other through what is called a wall format display glass. They're in the same room. And that patient that you see there, a three-dimensional version of that patient is also in this doctor's operating room in the US. They are operating together across the world as if in one room. This is what cyber technology has enabled for us. And I began this lecture by trumpeting the sort of the virtues of online prayer, online education. And we are at a time where we are sort of evaporating materiality. There are many benefits to it. We are in a time where we are all learning how to deal with this and balancing it with what we count as home. I've read some recent articles about young people today that are, there's a lot of mental problems. There's a rate of suicide is up. And this is a huge problem because as we live our lives, if we live our lives totally online, we're placeless. And so I'm not giving any solutions to this because the benefits of it are also enormous. This is the time we're living in, but the question is still the same. The question is, how do we take advantage of these benefits, but still be rooted to place, because we are people that are rooted in place. And I think a big key to Christian ministry, to work, Christian work, to just being friends with your neighbors, is reaffirming the materiality of, hey, here we are, and let's make home together. So you see these sort of smart cities now is the big thing. The entire city is smart, so that they're all sort of connected by the internet. It is kind of a technological analogy of this holy city that's coming down, this New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. It is not that, but it is a kind of an analogy of that. And I would encourage you to see that every stage of architectural history is in somehow an analogy to our human efforts to find home. And what I'm suggesting is that there's one journey that defines it all. And you and I are part of that journey. So I hope you find home, you enjoy home, and you help others find home. Thank you very much.